Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please begin to move to your seats and help us start on schedule. As a reminder, please silence your electronic devices and leave them on so you can text or email your questions for our guest speaker to the address on the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, U.S. Army retired, President and CEO, AFCEA International.
Come on in. If I could just take a moment, I'd like to invite Sergeant Major Sterrett and the last panel that was recently on board. Would you please join me up here again, please? If you all didn't have an opportunity to see this last panel, you really missed a great presentation and discussion. It was eye-opening and it was informative, and what I know, what I've always known, is that the combat multiplier of the United States Army is our non-commissioned officer corps, and we saw it again today. And so what I'm going to ask you is put it on your schedule for next year. Don't you miss it, because it was really, really worthwhile. And to industry out there, they had a lot of asks for industry and how you can help us move this forward as we bring our young men and women in to serve in uniform as we go forward. Now, I have a little soft spot because I was a non-commissioned officer at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, jumping out of those perfectly good airplanes, and getting my college degree nights and weekends, and getting scholarships. And so our motto back then was lead by example. So I just established the Lawrence Soldier for Life Scholarship for a young soldier at Fort Liberty who will go to my old alma mater, Campbell University, and get a STEM degree. So industry, I know you're always asking me what you can do. That's something else you can do, is invest in our future as we go forward. Thank you again, gentlemen. It was awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. You guys were awesome. Appreciate it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask one more ask. At the conclusion of our next keynote speaker, we're going to bring in some amazing young men and women from middle school and high school and recognize the winners of Capture the Flag. They are over there at the Georgia Cyber Center. It's going to be close. So I'm going to ask you, would you please stay in your seat and help me recognize our winners today? I'd appreciate it. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Leo Garciga. Mr. Garciga was selected as the new Army Chief Information Officer in June of this year. He's been a great supporter of AFCEA International. We've had him at multiple events. I'm personally ecstatic with his selection. He is a career civil servant with a diverse background in acquisition, engineering, intelligence, and information technology, having served in these roles across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community since 2003. Mr. Garciga most recently served as the Director of Army Intelligence Community Information Management in the Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff, G2. Please join me in welcoming our new Chief Information Officer.
So I think, how many folks were here last year when I was up on this stage saying very disturbing things? I'm very excited that you're all here this year. I'm going to take the rheostat and take it down like 2 notches. That is not true. I'm going to keep it up exactly where it is. So 30 days in the job, that's not a joke. Today is day 30. We calculated it last night, which is really funny. So it'll be interesting to see the reception I get here today and the questions. So like every other time I'm on stage, I'm focused on like one thing. What is our interaction, right? So I'm gonna talk for a little bit. I want to really leave some time for questions. I know folks have a lot of them. Some of them are loaded. Bring them on, right? Like, let's have a conversation. That being said, I learned how to use the clicker. First things first. So philosophy. I think last year I did this thing talking about a tale of 2 programs. I think some folks got my philosophy on cyber It's interesting. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of really modernizing stuff, right? We talk about digital modernization, we get a strategy out, we're working on implementing it across the board, but we did really fast sprints, right? All across the board, doesn't matter where you look, right? Cloud, let's run as fast as we can, let's learn as fast as we can. Defensive cyber, right? Let's move as fast as we can, learn as fast as we can. We're in kind of the next stage. We've led a little bit of the foundation kind of is in place. Now we got to pick up all the pieces, right? And picking up all the pieces is really about the discipline of delivering capabilities, right? So for those folks out there who say, hey, we're going to go do DSO all the time, DevSecOps, right? Some people think that means it's a wild, wild west, right? I would say, as somebody who's done it in real life, it's about discipline, right? It's being disciplined on how you deliver capabilities, right? And doing it the same way every time. And when it's different, making sure you can adjust to get that done. It's a really important principle, right? As we look at this next stage of kind of solidifying the foundation that we've laid and moving it forward, it's really going to be about getting some discipline on how we deliver across the board. I think the big thing with that is I use the word discipline very specifically, right? So it's a framework that you can move forward, looks and smells the same a lot, but that doesn't mean bureaucracy. And I would ask folks not to make that mistake when they come and talk to us and they see some of the stuff we're going out. This is about really slimming down the bureaucracy and getting a lot better at delivering. All right, let's talk about last year, because I have to recap, because folks will call me out on this, I know that. So last year I was up here, and I still stick to this principle, right? Every decision, cyber, programmatic, doesn't really matter, right? It's asking yourself this question: is it risk and compliance, risk or compliance, and risk versus compliance? I really believe that still, and that's how I make decisions today, and it's always that balance. But again, threat informed, right? So rethinking how we look at cyber and focusing on making those decisions based on threat is huge. All right, what I said at 22, because some of it is funny, so I'm going to recap what I said so nobody calls me out on it on stage. I still believe, number one, it's not all about cloud, right? It is not 100%, right? Focus on cloud where it makes sense. Don't take things that should never be in the cloud and put them there. That's not a good idea. Everyone fails when they do that. Red purple teams should be a huge part of our authorization decisions, right? I think we're still highly focused on the compliance piece, right? It's all about this great paperwork that we get to review and sometimes test and sometimes not get good grades on when we test. It's really about kind of making sure that these systems are secure and bringing that kind of rigor into the process where you're bringing in red teams and purple teams a lot. And not just major acquisition programs, right? I think right now we do a pretty good job of that across the Army. Business systems, we need some work, right? Capabilities that are built by ACOMs, we definitely need some work. But how do we really get real active and proactive with our red teaming? Look, continuous monitoring, I said this last year. I think it was a planted question by General Barrett. And I was like, it's not about EMAS. I don't want to hear about EMAS in this conversation. I really want to hear about how are you getting the latest data from your systems, all that telemetry, and building analytics to answer questions, right? And to understand the threats that are hitting that system. Huge. All right, the last one, well, this is where I have to kind of eat my own dog food a little bit here. So I said, somebody asked me a question and said, hey, sir, why can't you take what you've done in Intel and move it across the Army? And I think my exact words were, I can only do policy and guidance on the Title 50 side. Well, that's changed, right? So now it's a different problem set, right? Now I can do all that. So if you've got suggestions, as I often say, you write it, I'll sign it. I'm ready to go. I think the big thing is, how do we take some of those lessons learned on some of the really hard problems that we tackled on the Intel side, right? And scale them across the Army where it makes sense. So that's coming soon to everyone. All right, a couple of things just to kind of set the landscape. I think I got more feedback. It doesn't matter who I talk to. Everybody's feedback really is, hey, what are all the things you're going to change? And I'm like, I don't want to even have a conversation that starts like that. I think the Army has a digital strategy. We definitely have a data strategy, and it's a good framework to work against, right? Now it really is about implementation and how are we going to get at some of the things in the strategy. The reality is, right, we'll adjust the RIA stats where it's necessary, right? We're making progress across all lines of effort. When we have to rethink things, we'll rethink things. Unified network plan is the other piece that's really important. I think you'll hear me talk about zero trust, and I always say the very first thing that needs to happen is we got to collapse all the org nets, right? Super scary for many, but kind of common sense, right? Flatten the network, right? Let's just start with that basic principle. But that's actively being executed. I don't think there's any reason to change direction, right? I think now it's about maturing the process and accelerating it, if anything. RMF 2.0 transition, for those involved in that work, that is still going on, and we will still continue to move in that direction. I think, again, another place where you'll see some adjustments and some rheostats adjusted moving forward, and some new guidance, right, that doesn't exist right now, that really needs to get out to the force. And the one that everyone comes and talks to me about, which is requirements and resourcing. Look, I'm very comfortable that right now those are aligned for us to be successful where we are today. 2-3 years from now, we could have a different conversation. I think right now we're moving forward, no major adjustments in that area. So I think that really should calm everyone that the Intel guy's not going to come in and completely change everybody's world. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and I think the Army as a whole, we have a great plan right now, so let's go execute it. All right, focus areas. So that's not a joke. I've been here 30 days, which is really interesting. So how do you get focus areas? Lots of great directions from my boss, so I have some focus areas. Just a couple of things to think about. I start off with, hey, we've done these massive sprints. We've moved forward. Now we have to kind of codify and institutionalize that. I think the first piece that I'm really, really focused on right now is what are those critical enablers on the policy side to actually start to institutionalize some things, right? And some things out there, like lots of great work that's happened at AFC, and a lot of the programs out there have really started doing DSO for real, right? And started getting some of these capabilities, but we still haven't put guidance out, right? So we're going to focus around some things that are huge leaps, both from a security perspective and from ability to build software and move out faster. Container guidance, that'll be coming out soon. My team is cringing right now because I told them I wanted it yesterday, so they're working hard to get it done. So we'll see how that works out. Cloud security is another one, right? How many folks are working on Army systems that are in the cloud right now? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Part of this is really reshaping and being able to explain to tenants and customers coming in, and if you're a PM inside your RFPs, what it's going to look like to come into cloud in a secure environment. So we're really going to focus on getting some of that out sooner rather than later, one to inform the acquisition cycle, and I think the other one to get some standardization across the board so we can see ourselves a little bit better. I'm gonna do one last one because I get a lot of questions on this from all the functional folks and folks out there. We are going to be putting out some interesting guidance on use of government data on public and commercial platforms. I will not name any of them because I'm sure that the folks in legal will not like that. But there are platforms out there that are being used to do some analytical work, and we need to remind folks that some rules around this, right? And we need to protect DoD data, and we need to protect personal information too. So we're going to be putting some stuff out there. All right. As you see, a really big focus on policy, and there's a reason for that. One, it's actually my job. Two, it's a space where we've kind of waited to do it and focused mostly on, hey, we're going to change these long-standing, huge policies that are out there in the Army and some guidance, but we're not moving as fast as everybody else is right now, right? The programs are moving too fast. Capabilities out in private industry are moving too fast, so we have to adjust the way we do this. So the long-standing, it's not in AR 25-1 or 25-2. I'm the guy that has the authority to do the ETP, right? Okay, well, let's start doing what we need to do, right, and rewrite it. So you can see a lot of interim guidance coming out in that space, specifically around streamlining cyber and streamlining portfolio management. So think of reimagining if you're a program of record or if you're a PM or a DIB partner supporting a program of record, reimagining Klinger-Cohen, right? Slimmer, tighter, less paperwork, really what we need to do. Zero Trust implementation plan, huge one. Team's working it, it's great. I'm excited about it. We're working with DoD on that. I think the big thing is making sure that we can articulate where we're going and how we're getting there. Army data strategy and operationalizing it. This is kind of an exciting one, especially just coming from Intel and working on the Army Intel data platform in this space. I think the big thing is really starting that acceleration across warfighting mission areas, right? How do we better enable that? What is that going to look like? That's the Secretary's priority in this space. So really starting to get some forward momentum there from an operationalization perspective. I think for folks in industry, Army Data Platform, right, that continues to be or the artist known as Vantage today. Great capability. We continue to move forward, right? That's been like the pilot at an enterprise level. Really looking at a new competition here shortly, and shortly in DoD terms. So that's going to be second quarter 24. So I'm really excited to see everybody's approach this, right? So as the community is going to go with a multi-vendor award approach. So I'm excited because that's going to give us some diversity. I think very similar to what CDAO is doing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for folks out there, and I do want to point that out because it's upcoming. And then on cloud. So cloud's been an interesting space. So I think step number one, like I think my first 2 weeks, I was like, hey, we really need to get together and talk about some policy in this space between our team and the acquisition team, right? Like how are we going to make sure that we're delivering software in a way that makes sense and that we have all the enablers around that. So big focus with ASALT on starting that process, right? Really focus first on acquisition systems and then moving out towards the non-acquisition systems that are out there. And look, IL6, I know a lot of folks are excited about IL6 Cloud. One of the big rocks right now is all that success and all that work that's already been done in the Army on IL6. I think AC2SP right now on the Intel side has more customers than anyone else in production. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? How do we take all those design patterns? How do we take what's already been done there that's been vetted and in production and move it over? So I think we're going to push really hard to accelerate that work in the next couple of months so we can get some programs up on IL6 because it's critical, and they've been kind of sitting and waiting. Okay, Zero Trust. So as you see, I'm not very buzzword compliant in my slides, and that's on purpose. Lots of great work happening in this space. Every time I think about it, I always break it up into the two chunks that matter, right? And that's improving user experience, which is critical, and improving their cybersecurity posture. I think the team's done a great job of starting some stuff right now, right? BYOD, if you're not on it and you're in uniform or a civilian, jump on it, it's awesome, right? Commercial solutions for classified and scaling that out. You know, a lot of great work that really gets at how do we deliver capabilities in a much more efficient way to the customer, and how do we make it better? And for those who've been around a minute and have even done something as simple as move from one network to another, this is kind of critical stuff right now. Like, we got to get this right. The other piece is improving cybersecurity posture. I don't think anybody will argue, if you look at the Zero Trust pillars, that fundamentally what we're trying to get at is really improving that security posture across the network, seeing ourselves better, understanding what we look like, and understanding what those threats are at scale. Super excited about this. I get excited about some silly stuff sometime. ICAM, right? So luxury of operating on IC networks for a long time. Love ICAM. We want to talk about securing data. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you're doing at scale. That's a great effort that's happening right now that I'm excited about. I think probably the one that gets me the most excited every day is Unified SIEM and really moving to that next generation capability where we can see ourselves across the network, right? Like really see ourselves and start talking that next step, which is like, let's do real analytics, right? Like, let's really get after streamlining how we see ourselves and how we see the threat on the network. And I think the big rock here is, right, it really is about starting to get to centralized delivery of enterprise capabilities, which to many that's like, well, yeah, we should have done that already, right? Or we should be doing that. This is really about scaling that across the board. Super important. I know I'll get a lot of questions on that because I usually do, but I think this is kind of our critical thing. And critical to that is OrgNet convergence, right? Is us flattening the network across the board so we can push a lot of these capabilities out into the network in a ubiquitous way, if anything. All right, things I'm thinking about. I forgot what I talked about last year. I think I talked about, well, number one is still the same, right? This continues to be one of my biggest concerns as we're on this journey to enable, and I'm using very precise language, to enable AI and ML capabilities. We got some work to do still, right? QA, QC of algorithms, security, what does that look like? I'm really asking for a lot of help in this space. I know we're all struggling with it. Everybody's kind of in a different stage here, but we want to be a little bit proactive to get some of that stuff out, right? So whether it be guidance or TTPs or SOPs, I think that's huge, and we need a lot of help thinking through that problem. And my expectation is that the DIB will help us, whether it be with their investment or as partners in this space. I'll add one more on there that's not on the slide because it's one that I continue to kind of talk to DoD CIO about. Security and SaaS offerings. It's really interesting, right? Like some people in here are like, oh, it should be easy, Leo. Not an issue. I'm going to tell you we're struggling with it, right? Across the department. What does that look like? And it's more than just, hey, I got this capability and a vendor telling me, hey, it's secure, Leo. Okay. It really is, what's the SLA around that? What does that look like? Are we doing the contract right? I don't know, right? Is it a contract thing? Is it just the business model? Are we dependent on a managed service now to be our security provider? All great questions, right? How does that data get delivered to us, right, on the government side? Does it have to be delivered? I don't know the answers to all those questions, right? I think there's a million models that we can go after in this space. But as I look at SaaS providers coming in, especially IL6, I think we're really struggling with working through what that model is going to look like. And I do believe there'll be a one-to-N. That's just a real thing because folks are just built different in how to deliver services. But your help in that space would be huge right now because the quicker we can get to at least an initial framework of what that looks like, the quicker your capabilities will be leveraged by us. So that's a big one. So this will be a little bit, I hope it's not controversial, but here, everyone comes to me and they want to give me kit, right? Whether it be hardware, software, a managed service, name it, a SaaS capability. We really need help on the rest of the .MLPFP, right? Big time. Like big time need help. I think of things like DevSecOps, and actually operationalize in a pipeline. Even some on the analytics side too. Just what does that look like from a TTP perspective? Cloud, the data engineering piece. A lot of it is like, hey, I've got this kind of all-in-one solution I'm gonna give you and you're good to go, and then I have some FSRs that go with it and we're gonna train you how to use it. I don't know if that model works at scale across the Army, right? I think some of this really is, how do we get at some of the edge stuff, right? If you're a company that right now is doing great work on AI and ML, and you've got a training program internally, I want to know about that training program first, right? How are you training your folks, right? If you are any of the big commercial vendors here who's running full instances on AWS or Microsoft right now in the cloud, I want to know about your TTPs, right? What are your left and right limits? How does your CIO manage your spend in cloud? It's a really important question, right? Because what I don't want to do is reinvent the wheel either. If you found success in this space, like help us in that space. On the training thing, I think this one's really interesting because as I talk to folks on training, I get like two sides, right? I get to either, hey, we do like this very basic level of training, which is awesome for non-software developers and non-data people, which is great because we have a lot of those folks. And then I get like PhD level work, like need Calc 3 and differential equations to take the course. That's a pretty wide paradigm, right? I think we're looking, what does that training regimen look like in a lot of these spaces? And what does it look like beginner through advanced, right? Because as we look across the formation, there's a lot of folks that are just all in different places, and we got to be able to get that done. And though eventually we'll get it through the institution, and push it through into core training curriculum in the Army, it's going to take some time, right? So much like the policy piece, we got to be agile enough to get it there. And then the other piece, right, just like I said for SaaS, is contract approach, right? Some of this is we do have to have this continuing conversation on, are we doing it the right way? Where can we kind of adjust and shift in what makes sense? Definitely an ASOL thing, but I know our partners in ASOL are working really hard to look at that moving forward, and we're here to help. All right. The last one, for those folks who've known me for a while, I always say this, right? I need the Lego block, not the Lego set, right? And this is really, really important. As I talk to folks, I always see like, well, that's this Lego block, and that's this one in this other set, and this is the other one in this other set. But at some point, I got to deliver something and build something, right? That's functional. So more and more, we need to start having conversations about Lego blocks, not Lego sets. And again, much like the SaaS problem set, how do we start decomposing how not just the Army delivers capabilities, right, and DoD, but how our DIB partners come in and deliver capability to us? And look, I acknowledge the fact that it's uncomfortable, but let's move to friction on this, like quickly, to make sure that we're getting the right stuff out to the warfighter. All right, that being said, I have no idea how long I've been up here because I don't have a timer in front of me, but I am 100% going to open it up for questions. Like I said, I'm 30 days in, so you may get, I'll take a look up on that. For sure, that may happen. I'm excited to be here. I've had some time in the Army. I had some fun in Intel, so coming and trying to scale some of that stuff across the Army gets me a little bit excited. I have a lot of friendly faces out here, so I'm excited about that too. I think the big thing is a little bit of patience right now. We're gonna move pretty fast and pretty hard on getting some guidance out in a lot of areas. And again, I have the ultimate open door policy, which my staff does not like, and I already found that out because folks just walk into my office and they're not used to that. But part of that is being accessible and being present and being able to move out quickly, right? So my whole thing is like, I want to go to the person who knows like how to solve my problem so I can go solve the problem with them. Other than that, I'm good. I'm going to open it up to questions. And can somebody give me how much time I have?
You have about 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Oh, I'm good. I was off by 3.
So we do have some questions that have come in via email. The first one is both Lieutenant General Morrison and Lieutenant General Skinner mentioned transport agnostic network. Current STIGs prevent using commercial methods to transport DoDIN, which would create significant cost savings for circuits. What can you do to remove these policies that are blocking circuit innovation to securely transport DoDIN via commercial circuits?
Oh, we could so do this. Like there's no magic here. So look, I 100% think that we can transport our information on commercial circuits. I can give you a bunch of examples where we do it today. And we do it both across DoD and the IC. I think we're working right now. Part of this is, yes. Part of this is our translation of policy, and some of this is working really through DISA on what that looks like, right? I think across the board, certain capabilities, we know we're working in the space right now, and we're able to bring commercial capabilities in. I think the longer term question is this, right? What's the framework that we're going to use around it, and what are the use cases that make sense, right? So I think our initial gut thing is we're going to go all commercial and it's going to work. And I'm like, well, that's probably not the best way to do this. I think there's going to be a healthy mix. There's a lot of examples out there where it's going to be needed. And there are some challenges from a security perspective. But what does that mean, right? How do we lay on an approach that allows us to still monitor in that space? I think there's other challenges too, right? I put my Intel hat on all the time and say, let's not go out there and make a signature because we're bored, right? So there is some thought around, does it make sense and where does it make sense and what does the threat look like in that space? So I gave you an answer that basically said, can we? Yes. Do we have to make some changes? Yes. Do we have to really think through the problem and focus on threat and where it makes sense? Yes. So all of that. A lot of work to do in that space. I don't think it's as easy as just pushing a button and saying, hey, this is the way we're going to go. I hope that makes sense to everyone out there. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you. What are the plans for Ops Intel convergence, especially now that we have a CIO with Title 50 experience?
Yikes. That's a trick question. Look, I think, so there's a lot to that question to peel from that. But I will say this. The focus around data is critical. And starting to think through that problem and bringing services like ICAM on board and really starting to take a look at some more robust capabilities on the analytics side are going to start giving us the ability to do that Ops Intel convergence in a much smarter way from an operations perspective. But I'm going to take a step back and say from a policy, process, TTPs, it's happening right now, right? I think if anything, coming into this seat, it's going to be the opportunity to take a lot of lessons learned and lived and come on the Title 10 side and not relive those lessons learned, right? So where can we accelerate? I think the other big thing is just reach, right? Like this is something that that every CIO is challenged with, right? It's one thing if you can pick up the phone and call your counterpart in the Air Force. It's another thing if you can pick up the phone and call your counterpart at NSA and have a conversation to move fast, right? Or say, hey, what are you working on in this space that we can leverage if you're out in front? So I think the relationship piece is the important piece. And again, that's a very CIO lens of the world, right? How do we get our team to build that relationship a lot tighter with the Intel community? I think the number one thing, right, and it's not just about ops Intel convergence, it really is having a change in focus, where when we talk about folks in a place like CIO, we're talking about threat, right? We're talking about what's really happening in the world and making decisions and writing policy and pushing guidance out from that lens versus from what has been the traditional lens, which is a compliance lens. I think I told my team the other day, we're going to operationalize the CIO, and I caveated that with, that does not mean running things out of the CIO. That means that we're going to make sure that we understand operationally what the problem set is and that we're pushing out guidance and policy that supports where we're going as an Army. So I hope that answers that question.
Sure. How are you going to address your cyber workforce shortages? And is the Army CIO in charge of the Army's Mil Civ Center cyber workforce?
Yes. So we definitely have an oversight and governance role in that space. Look, lots of great stuff happening right now. We've been lucky. So first, I think started really, so cyber accepted workforce, good program, moving forward with that, right? That's helpful, and that's really helping us retain some talent. I think the other piece is we've seen on the Intel side kind of a change in the local market supplement and taking some of those DSIPs employees and giving some more capability to civilians to retain and to bring civilians on board. So a lot of work to do in this space. I think we're going to continue to be fighting a curve of attrition and our accessions not matching up. And there's definitely some space for policy changes and rethinking on the cyber side what it means to be fully qualified to deliver capabilities. I think that's really the big one, right? It's how do we continue to combat that? Because it's a challenge, right? We're talking in high demand folks that we spend a lot of time training. That one is hard, they're hard to keep, right? And let's just be frank. And it's not just because of pay, it's a million different reasons that are out there. I think we're going to continue to work through what incentives do we have and where do we have some opportunities. I know that our cyber's done a great job getting some really good programs out there, not just to build a pipeline of folks coming in, but to retain that workforce. I think the larger challenge, believe it or not, is in some other spaces, right? I think we look at, finding somebody out there in the environment today that can write a policy for, like a container policy for cloud. It's not that easy, right? There's like a handful of folks. I think we have like 3 folks right now in the Army working that together, right? And some of the same folks that were working at Intel, working it now for the rest of the Army. So we've got a lot of space across that entire landscape to work on. But we do, right? I think CIO perspective is really, right, orchestration and governance, and how do we make sure that those programs, right, are resourced well, right, and that we have a plan moving forward to bring that talent and retain that talent where necessary. That was not the best answer, but again, 30 days, I get an excuse on that one, I get 1 pass. Next question.
Okay, how do you foresee industry DevSecOps pipelines connecting to Army DevSecOps pipelines, IL4 and above?
Yikes, that's a great question. I'm so excited about this one. I don't know who planted that question that knows me. It was not General Barrett. Outstanding. Hey, look, so I think there's space for everyone, right? 100%. But this goes back to what I said about we have to make sure that we're partners in how we get this done. So a couple of things, right? We could just say you have to use our DSO pipeline. That's probably not a good answer, though. I think there's space for everyone. And my experience has been, I'll give you 3 models right now. We have one model that's very successful today that is 100% government-owned, government-operated. It works. It's agile. Probably not sustainable long-term, but it's working, right? And capabilities being delivered. We have another model that's very much GoCo, right? It's a very well-informed contract delivered at an enterprise level, right? With civilians and folks in uniforms really managing that pipeline and vendors coming in and use it. I think that's okay, and I think that model works, just not for everyone. And then we have another model in the Army, and these are all real CI/CD pipelines that are going to operations, by the way. We have another model where the vendor has their own integrated pipeline, right? And they're delivering that capability, that one specifically into the cloud, and we're integrated into that process. Not as much as the GoCo model, but we're still integrated into that process. So the real question is this. It's not, can we do it? The answer is yes, that makes sense. It's what is our partnership, right, between industry and the government to integrate into that process. And I'll be very explicit with what I mean by that. I think the first time we had a vendor that said, hey, we've got our pipeline, here's what we're gonna do, and we asked to integrate, they said, no, 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 don't worry, we got you. Famous last words, right? We said, no, that's not how this works. and if you were here last year, every time somebody says, I got you, Leo, they get an F, right? So there was a lot of negotiation that had to happen, and in that instance, there was a contract change that had to happen in order to more robustly integrate the portion of delivery that the government is responsible to accept the risk on. So I think there's a conversation that needs to happen there. So whoever asked that question, thank you. I think that's a really important question. I think we talk about these things like all or nothing. I think there's a bunch of different models in this space, and it's going to take some time. And that's an area where we're going to have to work on some policy and some guidance moving forward, and really work with ASALT on what that looks like birth to death, right? Because there are some challenges there, and there's some risks that both government and industry is going to have to take and accept. Awesome. That's a good question, by the way.
This is going to be our last question. How do we keep up with world adversaries when our bureaucracy, when they don't care about discipline, and really our only focus is the pace on technology?
Oh, can we go back to my second slide? Discipline does not equal bureaucracy. Like, let's just be very clear. Look, yeah, we got to move fast, right? Like, this really is, we have to be able to adapt. We cannot be stuck with the bureaucracy. I think most folks who've worked with me a long time will tell you I'm a bureaucracy hacker, right? Like, that's what I live for. I live for people telling me why I can't do something that's written down or that I'm already allowed to do because of an interpretation, also known as a barracks lawyer. And I go out and I write a policy that says, yep, this is what we're doing, right? I fundamentally don't think that we have that problem. I think culturally we may have some of those challenges, but I think there's enough folks right now in the Army and in the department where we've got a lot of folks in critical positions right now that are all about hacking that bureaucracy, right? And not allowing, in some cases, decades of practice remain that don't need to. And I think my team will tell you right now, every time I look at something, well, we can't do that because of what? When was that written? 1992. I'm like, geez, I wasn't even in high school. I'm like, does that even count anymore? And then I look at it and I'm like, wow, this thing is not just outdated, it doesn't even make sense, right? And they're like, well, that's what's stopping us. I'm like, well, rescind that. Like, we've got the power of the pen, go do it. You know, I think there's some that are a little bit bigger, right? I think on the data side, we've got a lot of work to do, to get some of that fixed. But for the most part, I haven't run into anything, and there's a bunch of folks who've worked for me out here, and I always say this, I have yet, as the Intel guy, when I was at A&S, when I was at DoD CIO, I never ran into a real thing where the policy said I couldn't do it. I still haven't found this mythical thing that says, nope, you can't do that, right? Because every policy has an ETP, that's a real thing. It's usually the last line, nobody gets that line. And then the other piece is just, like, people make their own policy, right? Color of law rulings, as I call them. We're gonna interpret it this way. So there's some work that we need to do. This is where we gotta be a little bit self-reflective too, as we go through problems. And I will say this, right? I'm the first one, I will always be the guy that says yes, almost exclusively, by the way. I'm like, yeah, we could do that. Like, here's how I would write this. Do you guys have any ideas? I'm looking for the people that say no, right? And trying to understand the why of the no. So I know that that's not the best answer, and what I really just said was, I don't know an instance where that happens, minus acquisition law, because there's actually some real reasons for that. But from a cyber perspective, from a deployment of capability perspective, if you've got one, please let me know, because I will go fight that. but I have yet to find one. And if it's an Army one, don't tell me, because I'm just going to say, did you write the solution for that policy? My expectation is the answer to that is, yes, sir, here you go. And then we will staff it, and we will sign it, and we will fix that problem. If it's a DoD one, that's a different issue. We'll have to go have that conversation. But again, right, masters of our own destiny, right? And we got to really focus around that. All right, I appreciate everyone listening to me this long. I have no idea what the time is, but that was my last question. I'll be around, new to this job. Like I said, open door policy, right? Agility through discipline. Just remember that, especially if we're going to talk DSO. But other than that, thanks everyone. I appreciate everyone sticking around.
Please welcome Susan Lawrence back to the stage.
What did I tell you guys about leaving? Get back in here. Well, what you've done in the first 30 days is a great sign of what's to come. And so we thank you very much for being with us today. We know you have a busy schedule right now. In lieu of a speaker's gift, we're going to make a donation in your name to the Fort Gordon Historical Museum Society. So thank you again for telling us what you've done in the first 30 days. Amazing. Please join me in thanking Mr. Garciga. Thank you. Okay, now you go. Okay. During the next break, you can find a full slate of breakout sessions in the Riverwalk hallway of the exhibit hall. Our final session today is going to be very interesting. It's the AFCEA IDEA Senior Cyber Leaders Panel, Moving Toward Zero Trust Cybersecurity Principles, which will be followed by the reception in the Riverwalk hallway. The panel will begin at 4 p.m. And again, both the panel and the reception are being sponsored by Converge One and Sienna. So over to you, narrator. Let's recognize these great young men and women.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's give the students just a moment to come into the room, and we will begin in 30 seconds. He did, but this is a little bit of a mess.
What color hat do you wear? What color hat do you wear? From Greenbrier Middle School.
And these flipped.
That would be third place. Bits and Bytes better than the rest is gone. So what color hat do you wear? Greenbrier Middle School for third place. And first and second in Berkeley. So Cyber Sentinels are second and Augusta Prep is first.
Good afternoon and welcome to the AFCEA TechNet Augusta High School and Middle School Capture the Flag Award presentations. Today, the high school and middle school students put their cyber skills to the test. We had 29 high school and middle school teams participate both in person and virtually from around the CSRA. Topics covered for this event include binary exploitation, reverse engineering, web exploitation, cryptography, forensics, and security. We would like to thank those that helped us put together this event. From Parsons, Tom Barnes, Brian Yutzi, and Liz Cornejo. From the Cyber Center of Excellence, Rochelle Thomas and Demita Davis. And the co-sponsors for this event, BAE, DirectViz Solutions, ECS Tech, CSRA Alliance for Fort Gordon, Leidos, Maxis IQ, Sealing Tech, and Softac. Additionally, we would like to give a special thanks to all the teachers, coaches, and mentors that support these teams in preparation for this event. Your daily work with these young adults is amazing. Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Major General Paul Stanton, Commanding General, U.S. Army Cyber Center of Excellence, to the stage to make opening comments.
Hey, so my first comment is thanks for everybody that stayed in your seats, right? Because the students that are sitting over here on my left, your right, are our future. They're the ones that have dedicated themselves to the discipline for learning hard STEM technologies and the willingness to compete, to build teams, and be inspired to be the next generation. So I appreciate you staying to offer your support for their hard work. They've been across the street at the Georgia Cyber Center, hard at work in tough competition, solving challenging problems that are equal to those that we're tasked with in active duty service. So I'm immensely proud of having the opportunity to acknowledge those that excelled and our winners. And I salute all of you students for your dedication to helping solve real-world challenging problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We would like to invite the following personnel to the stage to present the awards. Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, U.S. Army retired, President and CEO, AFCEA. Command Sergeant Major Michael Starrett, Cyber Center of Excellence Command Sergeant Major. Tom Barnes, Parsons, Vice President of Cyber Strategic Initiatives. Don DeSanto, BAE, Director of DoD AI, Cloud and Cyber Programs. Dr. Tom Clark, CSRA Alliance for Fort Gordon, Executive Director. Debbie De La O, VP and Division Manager at Leidos. Jeremy Lorette, Director, Digital Transformation, Maxis IQ. Wade Saunders, Sealing Tech, Army Business Development Account Manager. And Sam Anderson, SoftTAC, Executive Vice President. And now we would like to recognize the winners of the middle school Capture the Flag. Third place goes to What Color Hat Do You Wear? From Greenbrier Middle School. Team members are Carter Stone, Tessa Killebrew, Tristan Garrison, and Rachel Hamilton, and the school mentor is Loredana Schultz.
This is very well earned, well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Super. Yeah, you got to shake
there we go.
everybody's hand now, right? That's what you realize. Congratulations. Hey, team, come back to the center.
Yes, you do, absolutely.
Call on all
Okay,
those as we
perfect.
go. All right. One of you come on this side.
And we got
I'm
the
gonna
coach too.
work the street pictures.
The coach.
Yeah, see, no, I'm not good at it. Well done, congratulations.
I'll give this to you in the middle.
Second place goes to Cyber Sentinels. Team members Corbin Parrish, Caden Wamsley, Alejandro Pascual, Ashwin Gurumurthy from Greenbrier Middle School, and the school mentor is Loredana Schultz. And in first place, Augusta Prep Middle School, team number 1, team members Sangami Menakasimi, Ayana Kiani, Abby Moore, Giovanni Juarbi from Augusta Preparatory Day School. School mentor is Mary White. And now let us recognize the winners of the high school Capture the Flag. Third place goes to Juana Bark from Harlem High School with team members Chance Henry, Ethan Nelson, Grant Burpee, and Jeremiah Kuharik. Their school mentor is Brad Williams. Harlem?
Congratulations, well done. Well done, congrats. Great job. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay, 18 in the front, and then hold that in the middle.
Yes, absolutely.
Second place goes to the Cyber Boys, team members Aiden Calorie, Rohak Agrawal, Arav Patel, and Karnav Trivedi from the Alliance Academy for Innovation, and Aiden Calorie is their coach.
They participated virtually, so they're not here, but if you can hear us online, well done, congratulations.
And in first place, First place goes to the GHS fishing team from Greenbrier High School. Team members Leland Green, Bryant Hodge, Max Jaremski, and Shahorn Doggin, with school mentor Tyrone Abero. Ladies and gentlemen, please provide one more round of applause for the winning competitors and all of the teams that participated today. This concludes the award presentation. Thank you again for all that helped put the event together. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.